Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into the Garden of Doom, and this is episode 52, and like everything else in this show, it's meandering and a little bit odd, and 52 is not our 1 year anniversary because we've had some bonus episodes, even one that was not numbered. So, but 52 pickup, happy at least 1 year anniversary to us. And today we are going back into Africa, and this developed through a mutual friend. And I have a gentleman with us today who is, well, he's going to introduce himself largely, but today I'm going to identify him as the mysterious and multi-talented Miss Dr. Black. Dr. Black, I'm sorry. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. For most people who don't know me, for some people that know me, my name is Dr. Black, PJ Black in the wrestling community, or a lot of people remember me as Justin Gabriel from WWE, or by my moniker Darewolf or Cape Town Werewolf. There's been so many monikers, but yeah, for now you guys can just call me Dr. Black. I am 2 years away from my actual PhD, but you know, in wrestling world, that counts.
It sure does. We round up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know PJ, and as PJ Black or Justin Gabriel, he's from South Africa. So this is not just sort of a rando pickup. If it was, I would have tried to get him on one of my wrestling vehicles, and this is not one of those. As any listeners of the show know, though, there's a lot of overlap in the audience. So we have a mutual friend, and since Dr. Black has identified himself in this wrestling thing, I'm going to give a cheap plug to John Kiernan, who writes excellent entrance music for wrestlers, but I'm sure that the music he writes can be used in pretty much anyone who needs a theme for anything, whether you're a corporation looking to spice up your conference, or a comedian, or boxer, MMA, wrestler, anyone in show business. Even if you're a magician and you want to give yourself a little bit of edge, he really personalizes it. So free plug. He did not pay me for this. He didn't even ask me for this. He doesn't even know this is happening. But I appreciate everything he's done to do this, and we try to help each other in the background as much as possible. So Kiernan, great guy, John Kiernan. Check out his stuff, and he actually works with one of your former stablemates a lot, Monster Tarver.
Yes. So Tarver, I've been begging him to do a song for me for years. He's a very well-established Christian rapper. I love his voice, and I forget how we made this connection, but John was working on something, and I was like, "Do you mind if I pull him in to do the some of the choruses and stuff like this, or the verses?" And we went back and forth for probably about 7, 8 to 10 months, and what we came up with is really freaking cool. Excuse my language.
You can curse. It's loud.
I've been wrestling for 24 years now, and I think my current theme is by far my favorite theme that John has done. So if you guys heard that, please check it out. The song is really cool. It's on all platforms currently. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I know that he really tries to put the character and the talent's interests at heart. But I guess we're not here to talk about John, though. I'm sure he'd love it. Though, if you want to hear from John directly, he was a guest on Hammerlock Hangover, probably one of our first episodes. Probably it was like last November or December, so you can check that out. And he has his own podcast, so check that out. But we're here to go back into Africa because one of the interests that we share, obviously the audience of this show knows I have an interest in lore, mythology, religion, traditions. Anything that I don't know about, which sadly is a lot that I'm curious about, there's a pretty good chance that I'm interested in. And a lot of that I hope will be interesting to the audience. And if they're still listening at episode 52 by now, they trust me. So a few weeks ago, we had the host of the History of Africa on, Andy, and we were very appreciative of that, and we continue to be. But that was much more a straight academic podcast, which is cool too, because that's part of the difference. It's not all sort of mysticism and fringe, or we're a variety. But that was he did a great expose on the different linguistics and a lot of the different ethnic groups in Africa, and then we told a few stories. But this is going to be more of stories. So one of the things that we're going to start with here is that PJ asked me to look into a few things. He gave me a little homework, which is cool. I like that, and I did it. So PJ is going to introduce us, or at least he introduced me to the Dogon tribe. And I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Where do I start? It's been a while since I've looked into this stuff or even talked about it. But if memory serves me correctly, so the Dogon tribe is a tribe in middle of Africa that the priests are direct descendants from the Egyptian priests back in the day. So they have a lot of knowledge and they know a lot of things. One of the things that they believe in is, if you ask them, and you can go Google this, where do they get the knowledge from? And they will tell you from the dolphin people. And now I know this sounds really, really, really strange if this is the first time you've ever heard about it, but please look into that. So they have a lot of proof. They have a lot of sketches. They have a lot of stories from ancient. They actually knew where certain planets in the sky were hundreds of years ago, which modern day science or astrologers only discovered maybe in the last 10, 15 years, which is phenomenal. And they talk about another one that's close to it, yes, discovered. Now, some of these beings came here in spaceships looking like dolphins. So this is coming from the Dogon priest, by the way. So the way he explains it is the ship, like a spaceship, like you would see in a cartoon, flying saucer, would land. There would be a laser that shot that dug a hole in front of it, poured water into it, and then these dolphin people jumped into the water and they somehow communicated with the Dogons. It's really fascinating, and they talk about the dolphin planets. And I mean, this is just one of the things that the Dogons talk about. They talk about like ancient medicines, and I've traveled around the world. The new character that I'm doing is kind of like a shaman character, so I'll be trying to study some shamans from around the world and different tribes, like the South America and the South Africa, North Africa, even the Aborigines in Australia. And one thing that I found is they all have their own versions of ceremonies, especially medicine. Like we all know about ayahuasca. In North Africa, it's the iboga medicine. I'm getting a little bit off track now, but I promise I'll tie it all back in together.
Sorry, we can get, I'll take notes. Ayahuasca, I'm going to take a note of it.
Ayahuasca, that's like a medicine that will, expose you to the other side, if you will. You know, it's
like a peyote, it'll help free your spiritual side.
Exactly. And every tribe has their own version. You know, like we have the Iboga in North Africa. In South America, it's DMT and ayahuasca. You know, there's a peyote. There's so many. But anyway, if you speak to the Doe and all the other tribes about it, if you ask them, and remember, these guys don't know each other at all. If you ask them, where did they learn this stuff, or where did they get the formulas for this? Because ayahuasca is a combination of two different plants that they have to put together from the Amazon. And remember, in the Amazon, there's 190,000 plants. So how did they know to combine these two or these three plants? How did they know that? So when you ask all of them, even the Aborigines, if you ask them, where did you guys get these formulas from? They all say the same thing, and they don't know each other. And they all say, the people from the stars showed us.
Yeah, we have to tell listen nerds out there, they didn't have Doctor Strange out there telling them there's a 1 in 14 million chance, and somehow we got the 1 in 14 million chance where Iron Man was able to defeat Thanos or get the thing. So 1 out of 190,000, you can say trial and error, but that's a lot of trial and error. That's a lot of people trying and erring for a long time. I would think after a while, normal human nature, you keep trying to bite a cactus and you keep, cutting up the inside of the mouth. At some point, you're going to say, yeah, this is not the way to go, dude. So, yeah, I did some research on the Dogon people, obviously, because you had asked me to. And so it's funny because I came across their priests do say that they are descendants from the Egyptian people. And it's interesting because their history, it's really rather unclear. And I think people make of it what they want to. So some people say it's one tribe. Others say it was just an accumulation of tribes who were resisting the Arabian invasions into North Africa, and they were resisting becoming converted to Islam. And so they were sort of a bunch of people who got together, like Battlestar Galactica, like colonies who came together and sort of formed against this escarpment, this ridge, sort of where the Sahara meets, I guess, sub-Sahara, or maybe the reverse, where the Sahara meets sort of the livable parts of Northern Africa. So I'm not clear which one, but yeah, I saw the dolphin people. I also saw like sort of mermaids, or almost like crocodilians, but whatever it was is that they could come onto the land, and they sort of, like, their tails allowed them to sort of stand upright. And yeah, the communication. But it's funny how you said that the laser cut it, and they basically terraformed it to, with their version of water that they could live in. I guess it was fresh water instead of salt water, or the reverse, or maybe some different combination. Who knows? Well, I guess we don't by now, because they would have found it in the ground. But it's funny because, usually when you think about a laser that cuts a hole, you sort of think of like a mine, or like a giant, what am I trying to say? What are those things where they dig out? A quarry. The sort of encircle, it looks like a giant screw was put into the earth. And that's funny because what I sent you earlier, the recut structure, the Eye of Mauritania, looks like a giant screwdriver went into the earth, except it's 25 miles in diameter. So that really is a giant screwdriver. So that's your homework. You'll see that, and I'm sure it's going to take you down a rabbit hole.
I believe a lot of people believe that was one of the Atlantic cities, right? Atlantis.
Yes, some people believe it is Atlantis as well. And then a friend of mine said, have you ever heard the hurricane myth of Africa? And I haven't. But then when he told me it, I had heard it. And it's that all hurricanes sort of originate and they follow the original slave route, which was basically from northern, the western part of northern Africa to the Caribbean and into the Americas. And it could go in a bunch of different directions, just like, the actual slave route went, which is, I think maybe they took the existing weather patterns and adopted it to the myth rather than the other way around. But if you look at the Eye of Mauritania and the shape of it, it is that nebula shape that hurricanes follow also. So it's sort of a cool image to think that hurricanes come out of there, and it is some sort of vengeance of the continent. It is a colorful image, though. Again, I'm pretty sure the hurricanes existed more than, past 500, 600, 700 years ago. Well, the Americas were later. But
and who knows, like if that was Atlantis, or one of the cities of Atlantis, because I'm sure Atlantis was out over half the planet. You know, people think it was just one city or it just existed in one corner of the planet. I mean, I think it existed in many corners. Like the Earth has chakras. If you can also follow that. I don't know if you looked into that. A very fascinating story. Like it's funny that they try and pass it off as a myth. I mean, you know, obviously we haven't found the sunken city, we haven't found the treasure, but I don't think we'll ever find it in our lifetimes because who knows how long ago that was. You know, like how long do we know? We know of our history from like maybe 6,000-7,000 years ago. People still think the pyramids are like 12,000 years old, or the Sphinx is like 18,000 years old. Now I recently heard something that some archaeologists thought that the Sphinx was 50,000-60,000 years old. So who really knows? You know, like.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on the Atlantis thing. I've never thought that Atlantis was one place, and if it was, you know, why only one city? You know, as the Mu or Lemuria myths, and you know, the sort of great civilizations in other parts of the world. And we know that in the Atlantis myth itself, they went to war with a great power in the East and lost. So there was at least one other culture that rivaled them. So, you know, right now we've got New York, we have Los Angeles, we have London, we have Paris, we have Tokyo, we have Beijing. I mean, just like now that there's many cities that are centers and powers, why wouldn't there be many cities? They may or may not have been related to Atlantis, or like you said, Atlantis could have been one culture with many cities around the world. But yeah, so the Eye of Mauritania ties into all that. But there's, you know, a lot of that is fun. But I guess we stray. But yeah, so the Dogon, they knew a lot about astronomy, and apparently they've known some of this since 3200 BC at least. That's how far it can be tracked, which is 5,221 years to those of you trying to keep score at home, or even if you're alone. And that was way before there were any telescopes, and it's pretty hard to see some of these things with the naked eye, but they knew a lot about the planets. Now, they didn't get it entirely right, but they knew that Saturn had rings. They knew that Jupiter had at least 4 moons. Now, we now know that Jupiter has much more than 4 moons, but we don't know how many moons Jupiter are. And it has. In this year alone, we discovered 4 new moons of Jupiter. So they're working with the naked eye, and we have like the Hubble telescope. But the most interesting part is that they identified that the Dogon came from the Ceres star system, which is the brightest star in the sky, at least for most of the world, if not all of it. And that it was a triple star system. Well, until recently, we only knew about Ceres or Sirius. And we now know 100% fact that there is a second star, that there is Ceres B. And many scientists have posited that there could be Ceres C as a dwarf sun in there as well, because of some of the difference in how the light oscillates or gets to us. And it explains some of the reason why Sirius is the brightest star is partly explained by its sort of extreme twinkling. These are not technical words, obviously, but it is entirely likely that it is a triple star system. And if we find that third star, that's pretty amazing stuff.
And it'll be more amazing that the Dogons knew about all this stuff, and they don't have any technology. I mean, you can go visit the Dogons to this day in Africa, and they still do ceremonies. I mean, they still live in huts. They don't have any technology or anything. Like, they don't have telescopes. They still tell the stories. They still do the traditional dances. I don't know if you've looked into that, but they do like how they dress up as the gods or the aliens, you want to call them. They still do the ceremonies. They still dance around the fire. They still, I don't know if you haven't seen that, please look into that. It's very fascinating how they wear I don't even know what you would call that, the war paint and the masks, and from these from these reptile and dolphin people, and it's really a fascinating story. And there's so much more that they do know that is almost impossible to know if you don't have the technology. And every day scientists go there all the time to get some information from them, but when they come back, they just go, "This is way too out there to even possibly be true." And then years later, modern day science proves them right.
Yeah, it's true. And the usual response was, well, they got this information from Europeans who, went into Africa, 500 years ago, 600 years ago. The problem is that the scientists, the Europeans and the scientists who went into Africa at this time and encountered them didn't have this information. It was not known yet. And we also know that now that other cultures had this knowledge, the Egyptians, the Persians, a lot of the Mesoamerican cultures, the Europeans were sort of late to the party or acquired the knowledge, lost it, and then reacquired it. But whatever it was, the time period when the initial, we'll just call it the more innocent European contact in Africa, that information was not widely known to the greatest scholars. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a pretty well-versed student in history. But usually the first people who go into a continent are not the academics. I mean, it's usually the soldiers and the gold seekers and the merchants. I mean, the academics come later. They may have one doctor with them or someone that's going to, maybe be a linguistics expert so they can communicate, or a diplomat. But it's usually not your eggheads, from university that goes in there. So yeah, the Dogon, really interesting stuff. And, for those of you who are aware of the, QAnon stuff and the pre-QAnon stuff, and really something that this is millennia old, is that there's always been sort of this fear or myth of reptilians, and I don't want to get into the 10 bloodlines and this, that, and the other thing, but, could these dolphin mer people sort of be reptilians? Sure. Could they be a different kind? I mean, a dolphin isn't a reptilian, but, certainly, if you're looking for a description of a person, and you don't want to call them a crocodile, maybe you go with a dolphin instead, or a porpoise. Anyway, plenty of stuff there.
And there's also some other fascinating things on that. Think about it, like you get good people and you get evil people, right? And even in politics, you get people that are good, that are bad, in sports, in anything, right? So if there were any reptiles around, I'm sure there are good ones and there are bad ones. Same with the dolphins. I'm sure there are good ones and there are bad ones. A lot of people mistaken when they call someone a reptile. It's not that they think he's an actual reptile. When you call someone a reptile brain, it just means that they function from the subconscious mind where there's no emotional feeling, right? That they just kind of cold-blooded and they have no respect for other human life, But I mean, a completely different topic. I mean, I still believe that there are reptilian blood on this planet. And if you listen to the Dogon talk about the dolphins and the dolphin planet, they talk about a dolphin planet with dolphins and whales are much, much, much higher conscious than human beings. And they talk about the planet that they come from, and a planet that's full of water, and there's one piece of land on there. I forget what they call that planet, but I'll send you some links to that. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. All right. So how about the Zulu? Apparently they have some similar beliefs, or at least a similar belief that they originate from another planet as well.
Yeah. So growing up in South Africa, many people don't know this, but we have 12 national languages because there were 12 tribes. Before the Dutch settlers and the Portuguese settlers got to South Africa, we had the Xhosas and the Zulus and the Tepis and so many other tribes. A lot of people are familiar with Shaka Zulu.
Sure.
That story. So the Zulus believe that they came to this planet on Merkabahs, which is a Merkabah is an energy field around the body that everybody has, apparently. Every cell on this planet actually has. But if you're a very high spiritual being, you are able to travel it. That's the difference between ETs and UTs. ETs, extraterrestrials, can travel through time and space with technology, right? They use spaceships and stuff like that. While a UT is an ultra-terrestrial, which is like the angels and the archangels and stuff like that. They know how to switch on the Merkabah and they can travel without technology. So the Zulu people believe that they came here in a massive Merkabah controlled by, I forgot what being, one of the archangels, and they believe that they got dropped off in mid-Africa. And you can talk to any of the shamans or the priests still today, and they stick to that story. They have a lot of detail in it. They try not to mix with the Western world and tell them that stuff because, you know what will happen. People will just laugh at them. it's slightly off topic, but all this info that is kind of lost to us actually does exist somewhere. And this is another, I guess some people call it conspiracy theory, but underneath the Vatican City, they have a library that stretches 53 miles long. That's bigger than the Vatican City. I'm sure you've heard about that. And the stuff they have in there, they probably have all the stuff in there, because to get into that library, right, you have to be a pretty educated PhD in, I forget what, but you can request to go in there to do some research, but you have to know exactly what you're looking for. Like, say, for instance, you want to look up the Dogon history. You have to put in a request, and it takes years, and you get to go into the library, and you can only go into that little section which they direct you to. You're not allowed to go look around in the other 53 miles. Can you imagine what else they have there? And then if you get there and you do your research and you find out that was the wrong section, you have to leave and you have to do that whole process again, which sometimes can take years, which is, it's a ludicrous system. So it's almost like they're trying to hide all this information from modern day man.
Yeah, there's a lot of lore and suspicions around the Vatican Library, but good for the Vatican, they don't care. They're not concerned. They're keeping that under lock and key, which makes it great for conspiracy and stories. Even the NBC show Manifest, they said that the Vatican sent a piece of driftwood from Mount Ararat or Arafat, where they thought it was Ararat. I'm sorry, where it's supposed to be the resting place of Noah's Ark. So not about anything, but yeah, there's always what's in the Vatican and how much of the Library of Alexandria found its way to the Vatican and how much of the Templar treasure and and the treasure might not have been all material treasure, might have been knowledge treasure as well, and books and things like that. Books, writing was held to very small sliver of people through lots of history. Writing is a relatively new thing for reading and writing, period, for sort of masses. I mean, in many religions, it was illegal for anyone other than the priest class to know how to read or write and know how to decipher anything. It was took away the power. But yeah, there was something that you said about this. Oh, it was the what did you say? The Merkaba, was that the word that you used?
Merkaba. So
Merkaba.
People that meditate, they learn how to switch on that. You must have seen it before. Maybe here, actually, I have one. 1 second. One that I made an origami piece of paper. This is what it looks like. You must have seen this. This is what the Merkaba looks like.
Oh yeah, sure. It's like a 3-dimensional 6-pointed star, almost like a Star of David or the Rastafarian star.
Exactly. That's where all the Star of David stuff comes from too, because remember they followed that, which a lot of people believe. So when a UT switch on their Merkabas, that's what it looks like. So that's what an angel will actually look like. It'll just look like a light in that shape, in that form. And there are actually meditations, and again, this is slightly off topic, but you can go and study and learn how to switch this on, because every living cell on this planet has a Merkaba, like an energy field around it. And so these are two little triangles, and the one is supposed to spin a certain way, and the other one's supposed to spin another way. And if there's anybody that understands physics, that's exactly how an atom works too, right? Because nothing in this universe stands still, like we are taught to believe. Everything moves. So there's a way that this thing can move, and you can take your actual physical body into the spirit realm, which might be another topic for another day, but
Sure, absolutely. And there's nothing that's off topic, and this is all completely related. That's really cool. I didn't know that the 3-dimensional star David was called a Merkaba, and I didn't know that it was sort of the vessel or the shape that the Merkaba is. I guess the Merkaba is inside of you, and it's throughout the universe, and you harness it, and it becomes sort of like it takes the form of looking like the vehicle, but it's not. You're doing it yourself. You're just harnessing the energy. That's just the form that sort of like the chrysalis that it takes. It takes that form. So you said the archangels did. So is it the same archangels from Old Testament, New Testament, or is it beings that existed that were adopted into the New Testament, Old Testament? Because I can't imagine the Zulus, when they came up with this, were Christians, or that I dare say Christianity didn't even exist yet.
Right. And who knows? I feel like I grew up a Christian, first of all. But, as I got older, I started questioning things and I started looking into other religions, if you will. And I started looking into all this stuff. And that's how I came across all this stuff. But, who knows? I almost feel like Christianity borrowed a lot of their stories and a lot of the ancient Egypt stories and a lot of stories around the world and kind of just made up, because let's face it, my mom's going to hate me for saying this, but religion is man-made. It's made up by man. It didn't come from a higher source like spirituality or anything. Religion is just, it's man-made. So we made it up from stories that we put together, that we heard from the Dogons and the Egyptians and other places. And, a lot of it from Egypt and who knows where else.
Yeah, who knows where the Egyptians got it from too? I mean, there might have been others. Conventional wisdom and science tells us that humans in our present or close to present form started in East Africa, and I think that's what most people still believe. But they still find little snippets here and there of hominins that may have been, almost as old or just as old. So that story still isn't completely written, but we're gonna stick to at least that we believe it was in East Africa, meaning to say that while Egypt is sort of in East Africa, there's parts of Africa that are further east, and so who knows who started the religions first? I mean, for all we know, it could have been in Djibouti. I just like saying Djibouti.
Yeah, and who knows? There's another thing that I read the other day, that planet Earth only has 10,000 years of sunshine and 90,000 years of ice age. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense where a lot of these things have been destroyed during the ice age and how just little pockets of the world survived, like the Dogons maybe, or the guys in Mesopotamia or in South Mexico, the Aztecs. There are pockets of tribes that existed everywhere, and there's different folklore and different myths about this stuff. But I mean, if you think about it that way, it kind of makes sense that every 90,000 years, we're in the cusp right now. We're at the end of that 10,000 years. So I don't know if you read up about the poles. It's supposed to shift, right? Every 20,000 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I doubt that we'll see that in our lifetimes, but
the orange peel theory.
Yeah. And I mean, you can go look back into that stuff and, the stuff exists and it's true. The fact that modern day science is trying to steer us away from that or tell us that these are myths and not true, to me, that's a massive red flag,
Well, the polarity shift is I believe that's considered to be scientific dogma at this point. Whether it happens swiftly or whether it happens very slowly, I think is part of the debate that's completely unsettled, and how that affects tectonics and the movement of oceans and continents and land masses and the water levels. I think it's still completely unknown. But it's for those people who saw Kong versus Godzilla and maybe some other stuff where they go into the hollow earth and they hit that gravity inversion point, that's what they're talking about, where the polarities shift. So whichever hemisphere or side you're coming from, the polarity shifts. So all of a sudden your gravity is going one direction and it's going in the other direction, and they created these crafts to counter for that. Anyway, so it's fine. When we were talking about the Merkaba, at first I thought about the Bifrost from Thor and Asgard, which obviously is imperfect. Then I thought about the Star Trek transporter, which is a little bit closer, but it's still controlled by human technology, which, if you take thought and call it thought its own, if you say our brains are quantum computers, okay, fine. And then I came up with, and I don't watch this show. I think I probably watched it every now and then when I was sick at home and there was like really no other choice except for the news and game shows. Doctor Who, where they would go into that, was a telephone booth, one of those old British ones where you close yourself in and then the light would come on. So I think that's the image I'm going to stick with in my mind, as opposed to the sort of the spinning multi-angled. Well, now I have a little dreidel in my mind spinning. Then when you spin a dreidel fast enough, you can't tell where the edges are. And you know what? That sort of looks like a Merkaba.
Hey, that's a funny thing you said there, that the brain is a quantum computer. That is very true. And we can scientifically prove now that the brain a thought is a scalar wave, a scalar energy, right? So we can scientifically prove now that thoughts can create matter, because scalar waves can create matter. There's a doctor called Dr. Joe Dispenza. If anyone has ever heard of him, I've read all his books. He's fantastic. He teaches this stuff, and he invented, what's the brain machine, the EKG that they hook up to your brain, and they have physically proven that thoughts can create matter. And it's like how manifestation works. Obviously, it's not instant, like, oh, think the brain and it happens, right? You have to obviously take the steps to explain that in a simple way. Think about this. Everything stems from thought. Everything. Like Steve Jobs, say, for example, had the idea of the iPhone, right? That was a thought first. Then he had to go through the process, find the technique, find the people to make that a reality. So, I mean, that's the long version, but there's definitely a way that people can do. Maybe in ancient times, there was a shorter timeline for that scalar wave to become a physical thing. And maybe the ETs and the UTs have that, I would call it technology, but maybe the spiritual knowing of how to manifest things instantly. But, so far, people think that it's all BS, but I mean, modern day science has proven all these things. We just, as humans, we're still so far behind that we just don't know how to actually do that on a daily basis. Because that's why we have so many distractions, because we have television and politics and all this other stuff distracting us from these things. I believe that all humans have these abilities. If you think about it, when you meditate, right, you put yourself in theta brainwaves, and that's when you like download knowledge from the universe. The first 7 years of a kid's life is in theta brainwaves. That's why, like, look at a kid, like, they learn stuff so quickly. They're like sponges. They absorb everything quickly. And once they hit 7 years, it's almost like they go into beta brainwaves, where they, not to use the word brainwashing or social engineering, but that's when, their surroundings take over. They are taught to believe what we believe, like this is the way. And you can actually look into this too. Like, there are a lot of schools in Russia that teach people these abilities, because all kids are born with the abilities to be psychic and telepathic in a way.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some people out there going, "Oh, it just sounds like a inspirational, motivational speaker or a physical, a personal trainer saying if you can visualize it, you can do it." But it has been within the last year or two, there have been tons of articles from scientific scholars, from researchers, who have shown they can track a thought. They can track a thought as it travels through your brain. There's also been research that shows that after your body is dead, they can still track energy and things that might be thought coming out of your brain, which could be the scientific basis of a soul. So for those of you who are strict scientists, it's a false choice. It can be both. The thought itself is, our brains feed on energy. Yes, they feed on electricity. So it causes energy. The energy can take forms. And, I think what PJ is saying is that some people, some beings better know how to harness their own energy and project it outside of themselves into a form more, certainly better than we know how to do. There are probably humans who can do it better or in different ways than we do presently. Maybe those are shamans. Maybe those are mediums. Maybe those are the Steve Jobses of the world who make things happen. Maybe that's what Alexander the Great. Who knows? We're just throwing things out there, but there's definitely science behind it that thought creates energy, and energy is matter. So it's 100% true. So a society that's 10,000, 100,000, 1 million years older than ours, perhaps they look like gods. And really, is there really much different if they have godlike powers? I mean, why not consider them gods? They may as well be. We may as well be God to the ant beneath our feet. So why not? So anyway, now I go on one of my famous digressions.
I love it.
Cool. Well, good. I'm glad. So you're from South Africa. So I recently became exposed to a guy named Michael Tellinger, and I looked at some of his work. I heard him on Earth Ancients. Shout out to episode 50, which Cliff Dunning from Earth Ancients was kind enough to be on. And I've actually reached out to Mr. Tellinger to see if he'd be on the show, and he's said, yeah, contact me in a few months. We'll talk about it, which may be a polite no, or maybe I'll think about it. Anyway, but I've seen him on Gaia. I've seen him on some other shows. I've read some of his articles, and he's also from South Africa. And he has a lot of stories about the stone circles and the Anunnaki in South Africa. So I know about the Anunnaki in Sumeria, Babylon, Iraq, Iran, and also in India, which seem to be the same Anunnaki as from Babylonia, Sumeria, though I'm not 100% on that. I had not heard about South Africa until I heard Michael Tellinger's talks on it. So, but you brought it up almost immediately. That was like one of the first things that we talked about, where instantly I knew we'd be best friends. So,
yeah, the Anunnaki story is very fascinating. And so years and years, I dived deep into that even before I heard of Mr. Tellinger's work, which is fascinating, by the way. I really want to dive deeper into that. And I believe that he has discovered some really, really cool things lately. That's maybe why he wants to put off this interview, because he wants to make sure his findings are in order, before he tells people about it. So I definitely look forward to that interview. From my understanding, the Anunnaki, same as it comes back to, remember I said that there are good beings and bad beings. I feel like the Anunnaki, there were some good guys and there were some bad guys, and they kind of like maybe went their separate ways. We do know the two brothers, is it Enlil and Enki? One was the good brother, one was the bad brother, one was fighting for the humans, the other one wanted to enslave them, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe they branched off. The stone circles, they believe, I'm not sure if it was Mr. Tellinger, but one of these guys believed that Enki's lab, where they created one of the versions of Adam and Eve, that's very controversial if you're a Christian, they have found in the stone circle in South Africa, which kind of makes sense because one of the stories is that the Anunnaki came here to mine gold, and they created the human race to mine gold for their technology or whatever. And we all know that South Africa is one of the hotbeds for gold and diamonds on the planet. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense, but that theory could also just be tied to that story after the fact. Who knows?
Yeah, well, the Anunnaki are said to, sort of always be where the gold is, and apparently they needed gold to do their interstellar travel, or maybe that gold is somehow tied to that Merkaba you were talking about, because maybe they harnessed that. But yeah, I had no idea that the Anunnaki were in Africa, and ever since I heard those pieces, I looked into it a little bit longer, and there are Anunnaki-like myths in South America as well. I mean, every place that you would expect, there's the word might not be used, but it's sort of a similar description of a similar situation. And for certain groups of Christians, certain evangelicals, they would probably be offended by the Adam and Eve part, but those who adopt the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Enoch and some of that stuff as part of as canon, they could easily substitute Eve for Lilith, who is the mother of monsters, and Adam just didn't know any better. So one of my goals in this is to try to take things where people could easily find offense and say, listen, it's a false choice. You ever play the game Operator when you're in first or second grade? The story changes even, over 24 kids. So imagine 24 millennia, or longer than that. So, some people believe Lilith was there too, and she was called the mother of monsters. So, why can't she be a parable? Why can't she be an allegory? Even if you don't think Adam and Eve are allegory, maybe Eve was the one they got right, and Adam was the one that they got right as well. But Lilith was the one that was wrong. But yeah, one of the myths of the Anunnaki is that they were tinkering to try to get the perfect, basically workforce, I guess we'll say politely, to mine the gold for them. I mean, even the benevolent Anunnaki, that was still the end goal, was to have a labor force. You just wanted the labor force to be treated better. I guess it's sort of like the organic, sustainable food movement. The cows are still getting killed. We're still eating the meat, but they at least can live the life that they sort of naturally do. The people would live their normal lives, but they were still working for the Anunnaki at the end of the day. So I don't know, but I guess that's sort of socialism, huh?
Right, exactly. And maybe if all of these stories are true, I don't think they ever left this planet. They just hide themselves or disguise themselves, and maybe as politicians, who knows? Or maybe they have some kind of control over the politicians. But if you think about it, we're still kind of, I don't want to use the word slaves, but people say this is a slave planet, but sometimes it feels like it, right? Because it doesn't feel like we have freedom. Because you cannot actually do whatever you want. Think about it. Like, you have to pay your taxes, you have to do this, you have to live on the grid, like all these things. It kind of feels like we're in a prison planet. And if you read any of the works by what's the guy that wrote all the books on the Anunnaki? Yes, I mean, if you read all that stuff, it kind of feels like we're still in that system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Sitchin. Sitchin.
Yeah, let me see. I have a really extensive book collection because I don't own a television.
Oh, cool.
I have some really cool books. This is Tesla's favorite book. There we go. That's Mr. Stitchin's one of his books.
Yep, the 12th Planet. I have the Anunnaki Chronicles.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I've yet to dive more into his work, but I kind of get distracted by. Right now, I'm on a Tesla kick. I'm kind of trying to learn everything that Tesla learned and reading all his favorite books.
Well, when we were talking, when I said that, it almost sounds like socialism. That was like a little light bulb moment for me, because I was always trying to figure out why the people who really were, seriously, earnestly, sincerely afraid of these, these bloodlines and the one government, the new world order stuff, how they were tying it into socialism. And I mean, I don't know if this is the tie-in, but if you believe all of it and you believe it all the way to the origin, well, that is socialism. Maybe it's benevolent socialism, but I guess if the other brother got his way, it wouldn't have been so much benevolence. Well, the other brother wanted to kill us all and start over again, but whoever came next that was acceptable enough, they would have been, pure slaves. And their father didn't care. He's like, just get me the gold, boys. Don't bother me. I'm watching.
Exactly.
He's like, I'm watching the game. Just,
I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt, actually. Benevolent socialism. I love that.
Yeah, I tell everyone that I'm willing to work for meatball parmesan money.
Are you Italian?
No, but I'm from New York, and the reason I laugh at that is because I haven't lived in New York since I'm 17 years old, and I'm going to be 53 soon. But New York is one of those places that if you're from New York, you're never not from New York. You're always from New York.
One of your ancestors is probably Italian or Irish.
Yeah, well, not mine. Further east, but. Basically everyone I grew up around was either Italian, Irish, or Irish German, which, I mean, if you look back far enough, they're sort of the same thing, or Jewish. That was pretty much, 95% of the people around me and around, most of the surrounding towns. So yeah, much Italian, much Irish in my formative years. And for the most part, all good. Cool stuff. Yeah, I don't even know how he got on that, but benevolent socialism, feel free. I hope it sells very well. Just put like Garden of Doom on there somewhere.
You got it. Garden of Doom. I'm going to write this down.
Yeah, I don't want money. I just want fame. I just want to be famous. I want my 15 minutes. I want to say that I became a star at 53. That's really exciting. Or 52. I'm still 52, so we can rush it. When I looked into some of the African myths, I was sort of dumbstruck that the role of jackal is eerily similar to the role of coyote, sort of in the southwestern myths, and the description is sort of like a sly fox, which sort of in European and sort of the northern part of North America, and I don't know, like the trickster. It's like every culture, religion, it always has like the trickster. This Loki, probably the most famous one now, thanks to the blessed MCU, which I love dearly. But yeah, Jackal was like always sort of like giving people enough truth and then sort of pulling the rug out from under them, sort of like Lucy holding the ball for Charlie Brown every time.
That feels like the current government lately. You know, like they just keep pulling the ball away from us, dangling the carrot.
Well, I feel that way about a lot of things, including Zack Snyder and Justice League.
Did you like that, by the way?
Okay. I have a very complicated relationship with it. The short answer is no, because it was over 4 hours, and that's just way too long for any movie. The first Justice League the original one was abysmal, horrible, terrible movie. I tried to watch it a second time to see if I got it all wrong. I couldn't make it through, so I'm like, no, it stinks. The Zack Snyder cut was better. So it made a terrible movie into an okay movie, but it was too long, which made it below okay. So I would give it a 3.5 or 4 out of 10. If he used an editor, maybe it would have been higher up there. He left in some of the bad stuff, and some of the stuff like at the end, that end sequence was cool, but that was a different movie.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't fit. See, I have a slightly different perspective. I really enjoy it. If you look at it from a storytelling perspective, the way he told the story, the first one kind of felt rushed and they left pieces out. The reason why he left bad pieces in there was, if he had to redo the whole thing, he probably wouldn't have done that. I feel like that just matched his way of storytelling. For me, the transitions he used, and it was just fantastic. If from a storytelling point of view, that movie to me was a 10. But like you said, everything else involved, I would probably 5 or 6. But a storytelling point of view, man, that was just a piece of work to me. I just loved it. I loved every bit of it. And my best friend did all the stunts on that, so maybe I'm biased.
Yeah, but you're allowed to be. It's fine. Whenever you have a personal relationship to a movie and to the people, you should do it. And isn't that sort of the trick of wrestling and wrestlers using social media properly now? It's like everyone's a fan of everyone, and it's a blessing and it's a curse, because there's no good guys and bad guys, because you're sort of like everybody now if they do social media correctly. But
and that's true. But if you think about it, the good wrestlers, like the guys who are over, for lack of a better term, they are usually the good storytellers, whether they are the good guy or the bad guy. They stick to that narrative with whether they're the good guy or bad guy. Because right now everybody knows what wrestling is. So, maybe I'll play a really good bad guy on TV, but I'll go on Twitter and be like, hey guys, look at the sunshine or whatever it is.
You're right.
Exactly. If you stick to that narrative and you are really good at storytelling, you're miles ahead of anyone else. And unfortunately these days, there's not a lot of guys that can do that in wrestling. And then the guys that do that will be super over.
So if anybody wants to hear my full thoughts on the Zack Snyder Justice League, almost in the immediacy of seeing it, on YouTube, on Unpopular Review, there's called the Caden Cut, who is one of the co-hosts, Caden, Kaden, and we talked for about an hour about how we thought that the Justice League it's hyperbolic, but it was a movie sort of riddled with holes, and I don't think it was anything unusual. But basically, I felt like they took Darkseid and they just they stole Thanos, and it's like all the scenes. They took the war scene. It was basically Lord of the Rings.
Thanos actually came after.
That's what people say in the comics, but once the movie cinema is out, you can't put it into yours and call it original. And the war in the beginning, it was literally like the end of The Hobbit, where it was the battle of the 5 armies, where so we don't need to do that again. But it's again, it was a great. I will agree with the premise that there's a great cinematic universe somewhere in Zack Snyder's brain. If he was given 12 or 15 or 20 movies like Marvel gave Kevin Feige to do, but let's face it, he botched his chance with Batman versus Superman and the original Justice League. And so, I know some people love Man of Steel. I thought 50% of it was good, but I thought 50% of it was terrible. And you just can't do that. You can't make a movie about Superman 50% terrible.
That's true. Zack Snyder is a genius. I would love to for the movie studio to give him full, complete creative control and see what he comes up with. I don't think that'll ever happen, but can you imagine?
I could see like a Netflix doing that, but Warner Brothers owns DC. So unless they're going to spin that off, and that's probably more than Netflix can afford, because, Netflix is either really in the black or they're really in the red. It's like never anything in the middle. It's like they're all over the place. And they seem...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, they seem to be ditching all their high expense content.
I know. What a crazy time. Have you ever heard anything about? I don't know even know what the word is, but say the Anunnaki right now, they are still in control. Right? Say these beings, they have to show the humans what they're doing to us, right? And they disclose a lot of things in movies, and that's why they hide certain things in movies sometimes. You know anything about that?
I don't, but it does tie into sort of the Hollywood tie-in thing. But no, I don't know enough to speak on that. I mean, I guess I've never looked into it, but my knee-jerk reaction would be like, that's possible. And then based on what I'm talking about, maybe it's improbable, but at the same time, there's people like you and me talking about this stuff. So why wouldn't filmmakers and artists also latch onto this and incorporate that into their stories? But who knows? I mean, listen, what's the fun in things being innocent coincidences?
Exactly. I don't think there's any coincidences, and maybe we'll both look more into that, and maybe that's a future episode.
That'd be very cool. I can bring back my Hollywood fat cat, Mark Hammer, back on, and now he is denied any influence with the Illuminati or that they've had any influence over him or anything like that. So, but maybe if we get him on enough, we can break him down.
Yeah. I have quite a few 33-degree Mason friends. I'm sure they wouldn't want to do this show, but it's very interesting talking to them because, they cannot tell you what they know, but if you ask them questions, they won't lie to you. So I have had very deep discussions with both these guys, and they just look at me, both of them, and I'm like, how do you know all this stuff? I'm like, I read a lot about, I read a lot of books, and, I don't watch TV, and this is going to sound really crazy. When I did ayahuasca and DMT, I kind of, for lack of a better term, download. I hate that term, but you get this information from somewhere and you just know it. It's like a knowing. I had to physically go buy these books and read up and Google and see if any of these things were true, and they were all true. So that's what kind of made me believe fully in the medicine that crosses over into the spirit world. Like I'm a full believer in all that stuff.
I don't know why you think it's crazy to use the word download, because the whole concept of the, I always say this wrong, the Ashkarthic or the Akarthic Akashic record, is that it's basically like a spiritual cloud where you download information. So that's exactly what everyone's using to say in that. So you naturally came across, there's nothing crazy about it at all. That's the common analogy now, the common metaphor. So you nailed it right away. Secondly, on your conversations with these Masons, if you know the right questions to ask, you should record your conversations with them, and you should have your own show. Or better yet, you should record it on my show. I'll just drop a second episode every week, which would be PJ's conversations with Masons.
That's a good idea, actually. Let me get in contact with these guys. They might be willing to do it, but not put their faces on camera, which is fine.
The camera, I don't keep the audio record. The video record. This is a podcast. It's only video. So, and if they don't want to turn their camera on because they don't trust me, that's fine too. I don't. The camera is really only so that, I think there's a little connection when you talk to someone, but it's mostly so that we don't talk over each other. So we see our mouths open, or you can put a hand up, or something like a sign. But there's no video option to this. There's no live stream. I wouldn't trick anyone like that, because how long is the trick going to last? Until I drop it? Then I'm their enemy, and I'm blackballed forever. No one would ever trust me. So yeah.
Don't want that.
No, we don't. We definitely don't want that. That's just me and my musings. And I've been trying to get out from under my own head for a long time. This is an outlet. Me alone with my thoughts is not something that we want to encourage. So let's get into. Yeah. Well, I think you might be a little bit further advanced than I am in that. Well, I don't know. This is my kind of meditation. This is sort of like my version. This is the way I take my journey. And so you're studying for your PhD. What is the exact degree?
It's morphogenic quantum physics.
Oh my goodness! What is morphogenic quantum physics?
It's basically how DNA works. How the soul tethers to the human body, the avatar, if you will. So I'll give you a short description. So most people, we all know that we're like, 85% water. Mm-hmm. We're actually 99% water molecules. And that's another thing. I started writing a book about a year ago, and one of my chapters was on water. So I started diving deep into water. Did you know there are 33 types of different isotopes of water on this planet? I did not know that either. So the deeper I dived into it, I was like, wow, this is going to need its own book. And I've already read like 10, 11 books on just water. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. But anyway, I came across the study of obviously quantum physics has always interested. I grew up, I just wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to read books when I was at school. I didn't want to do any of these things. But, in the beginning of the pandemic, and I broke both my legs twice, but 4 years ago, this is where I started on this journey. I had a near-death experience, and I sold my TV. I just started reading books and books and books and books, and that's why I have this collection. But anyway, I've dropped out of medical school twice because I wanted to be a doctor. But what they taught in medical school didn't feel like an education to me. It felt like an indoctrination. So I didn't want anything to do with that. I went to school in London, England, and I went to school in the US and in South Africa. So 3 different continents. It just didn't resonate with me until I found this professor named Dr. Jerry Rivera, and he teaches at the Bioregenesis University in Arizona. But I can do the remaining 2 years online. I just have to go to class once or twice. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in, because this is all about quantum physics and how the DNA works, which I'm fascinated by. As you know, 98% of our DNA is, well, I hate when they say junk DNA. It's dormant, or inactive DNA. God didn't make a mistake, or whatever your belief system is. I don't believe that there's 98% of our DNA that just doesn't work. I feel like if we can learn how that works and how to activate certain parts of this, we'll have like superpowers. Not like shooting fireballs from your eyes and stuff like that, but just more, be more compassionate, be more intuitive, be more psychic almost, if you will. Like just what we were designed to do, just better humans. Because at the end of the day, we're all, if you believe the Anunnaki story, they had to crossbreed our DNA with the fallen angels. Then we're all half angels, if you think about it.
Yeah, the different interpretations of the Nephilim, which may have been one of the inspirations for this show. I said it before on the show, and I hate to repeat myself, but sometimes when I was in services when I was a kid, and even more recently, I'm not ashamed to admit, like a wedding or whatever it was, I would just be bored, and religion sort of bores me in the services, which people think is strange because I cover so much of it, because I'm really interested in sort of like the mythology of theology. But I would read the New Testament, because you start at the beginning, and I could never get past it because there were so many things in there. I'm like, I don't understand this. I don't understand that. What's in the Nephilim? Why does this say giants? How does person number 4 get banished to the land of Nod and there's already goat herders? So these are all questions. And I grew up on comics and the Planet of the Apes and science fiction and things like that, and then you start seeing, this came from that, and this this was pulled from here, and also in Stargate, and the stuff from Battlestar Galactica becomes more impactful. So I don't know. I guess a misspent youth and partly misspent adulthood has led to the show. But not to go too much into the movies, but there's a movie from Marvel coming out called The Eternals. And I don't know who the Eternals are. And so someone told me what the trailer was about and basically the storyline. It's the Book of Enoch. It's the Watchers. It's just condensed into 7 superheroes. Now, I don't think they're doing crossbreeding now, and I'm not sure if they breed with man or not, but that's what it is. It's the Watchers reduced from 200 angels down to 7 superhero or super beings, basically. And Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was basically the Anunnaki. He showed Star-Lord all of his failed children in his lab that he had made, just the ones that he kept, that he'd been making over thousands of years until he thought Star-Lord was the perfect one to, his Enki, his next Enki. If that's what you mean by Hollywood dropping hints, I mean, there's 2 pretty big ones right there on the biggest screens there are. So that was a mind-blowing sound.
I definitely want to go look into that, because I definitely believe that there's certain truths. That I don't think there are a lot of original ideas. I feel like everything is kind of recycled and everything comes from somewhere else. And, growing up very, very Christian, my mom doesn't like this path that I'm on. But, like when I was a kid, none of these stories resonated with me. None of it made sense. Like you said, like you read about the floating clouds and the Nephilim and the giants and the fallen angels. But now knowing everything that I've known and studying the work of Stitchin and Sraya Stitchin and other guys in that same field, now that I go back and I read the stories, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I know exactly where this comes from. When they talk about the flying cloud, there's obviously a Merkaba or flying saucer that they were talking about, or like that. Little things kind of make more sense to me when I do read those stories. And I can also tell which stories were, not to say made up, but like borrowed from other religions or stories and kind of like just adapted to fit the narrative of the modern day Christian.
No, oh, absolutely. I mean, all religions borrow from each other, whether people like it or not. If they educate themselves, you'd see it's sort of obvious. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to abandon your religion. You could find the commonalities and decide on what you think the original truth is and subscribe to that. But I don't think anybody should feel bad if they are confused about this. In my journeys in this show, I became attached to, attached is wrong, affiliated with a conference called the Nephilim Anthropology Conference. And they had a conference in the UK. It was a Zoom conference. And they were kind enough to, they took to me early and provided me with a lot of guests. And so a bunch of guests have been on. And that's, by the way, that's one of the reasons why show 52 isn't actually 52. There's extra shows because I had so many speakers and so many guests, especially in the lead up to the conference, that I would drop 2, maybe even 3 shows a week sometimes. And in that, but the point being is that these were all people for the Nephilim conference. And some of them had never really thought about the Nephilim before or the giants before in the context of their studies and their expertise, and then put it together and they had their conclusions. And then there were people who studied it from various different viewpoints. And all I can tell you is that really no two determinations as to what the Nephilim were necessarily the same. Some were very, very different. Now, PJ has said many times during this show, and I'm saying PJ, I'm talking right to him, but this is going to be audio, said there were good guys and there were bad guys, and there might have been ones that are in between. So, again, it could be one of those false choice situations. Now, I think I figured out what I think the Nephilim are, and I think it's very similar to what PJ just said. But there's dissension even within the community that steadfastly believes this and even holds a conference about it as to what exactly Nephilim is. And also the show episode 51 is with the Orthodox rabbi, and we talk about Kabbalah. But of course, I'm not going to have an Orthodox rabbi on and not ask him who are the Nephilim and who are the giants, and his version is a little bit different also. So everyone check that stuff out. Not to be selling the old shows, but I'm selling the old shows. This is not a time sensitive show like a lot of podcasts. Most of these things are eternal. So if you're a new listener, I know there's a lot of you out there. So thank you to the Rational Rage Network and Wrestling Soup Network. I shouldn't forget to plug those guys and thank them. So check out the old catalog because not a lot of it is current events. All right. With all of that out of the way, joyously, we can get some of the more fun stuff. Because you asked me, do you know what a tokolosh is? And I'm like, I've heard the word, but I'm not sure. Then I looked into it a little bit further, and it was what I remembered, though there's different versions of the tokolosh too. And also it's sometimes said the tikalosh. Sometimes there's an E at the end. Sometimes there's not an E. But this is your mythology. This is your boogeyman from your youth. So I'm going to let you lead on this.
Yeah. So a lot of the tribes in South Africa, my parents both grew up on farms. So this was like how most people believe in the tooth fairy or Santa Claus, the tokolosh. Most kids believe in the tokolosh until they're almost teenagers. They believe, that, and that's how parents kind of scared kids to go to bed or, not get out of bed in the middle of the night. A lot of tribes in the north, in South Africa, but to the northern part, not close to Cape Town, like close to Johannesburg and north from that, they all still to this day they put their beds on bricks because the tokolosh is very short and he cannot jump and he cannot reach you if your bed is on bricks. And they used to scare kids if, you know, I mean, I remember my mom as a kid be like, hey, remember if you don't go to bed by 9, the tokolosh is going to get you. You know, they never like kind of explained what he is or what he did, but his name came up a lot. And as a kid, when you heard tokolosh, you know, if I didn't want to go to bed, my mom was like, the tokolosh is going to come get you. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to bed right now. You know, there's one of those fear tactics, I guess. But yeah, if you Google it, it's very fascinating how this little midget being looked like.
Yeah, the illustrations are sort of like if you took a gremlin and they procreated with like Stitch from Milo and Stitch. It's sort of like the offspring would look sort of like that. It was described as a water imp dwarf zombie, which is an interesting combination. And apparently sometimes it could be used as a shaman to vex his or her enemies too, which, hey, cool. And yes, a boogeyman, like the monster gets you in your sleep. And for convenience purposes, it could be made invisible either by swallowing water or small rocks.
Well, I didn't even know that.
So I'm sure lots of moms are saying, clean up your room, sweep the floor and don't leave your drinks out because the tokolosh will get you and I won't even be able to see it afterwards and avenge you or find you. I don't know if the invisibility spreads or not. But yes.
When we were kids, it only catches you in your sleep, which if thinking back now, I'm like, why would I go to sleep? I would just stay awake all night.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like all the boogeyman and the monsters under your bed. The Russians have Baba Yaga, who I don't want to spoil it because I'm trying to get a guy that's actually from the former Eastern Bloc to talk about those things. But yeah, that's sort of like the wicked witch that would steal kids, but Russian style, which is always worse. So I also found a bunch of other, I found a list with and it was a list of 11, believe it or not, but it started with the tokolosh. And then there was one called the Beely Ape. Now, I never heard the Beely Ape. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but I have heard the Ghost Ape before, or something's called the Ufiti, and also apparently the same creature is called the Bondo Mystery Ape. And as it turns out, this is real. This was just a subspecies of chimpanzees that were larger than other chimps and act more like gorillas. Now, I don't know the difference between behavior of chimpanzees and gorillas, but I imagine if you lived in that part of the world and coexisted with them, you would very much know the differences between chimps and gorillas. So something that was sort of in between that might scare the heck out of you. I mean, might be sort of like our Bigfoot or Yeti or Abominable Snowman. And the Ghost Ape moniker sort of means that it disappears pretty quickly. So I don't know. You hear anything about the Billy Ape or the Ghost Ape or the Bondo Mystery Ape?
No, I don't know too much about that, but growing up in Africa, I do know that the chimpanzees are kind of like the friendly version of the ape community, where the gorillas are like super aggressive. Have you ever watched the movie Gorillas in the Mist?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean that's a true story. You can go to Congo, and I think it costs you $500, and they will take you to these gorillas, and they're super aggressive. Like you have to sign a waiver and stuff because if they catch you, they'll go crazy. Whereas chimpanzees are always friendly, and like you can feed them and stuff like that. So I don't know if they played on that somehow, but I got to look into that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But I remember there was a while where they were like B and C and D level horror movies, and there was always like a white monster. So you went from I don't know. We had the white buffalo, which was a bison. It was basically Moby. It was basically all versions of Moby Dick, except in horror. And there was one that was called the Ghost Ape or the White Ape. And I mean, maybe 72 people saw it and me. I don't know, but I remembered it from that. One of the I don't remember if it was is Jane Goodall, is she the gorilla scientist or is she the chimp scientist?
Gorilla.
Okay, so she wrote that book, and the movie's based on her. She recently did an interview saying she wished she never did it. That she thinks she did more. She thinks she did more harm than good to the gorillas that she studied. They basically, their lives are never the same. I don't know if she's being too hard on herself or not. I mean, the alternative might have been hunted to extinction, but I don't know. I just thought that was sort of sad, and that's very recent. That's like within the last year, maybe two tops.
Oh, interesting. I definitely got to check that out. Yeah, who knows these days? Maybe people get pressured from above or from their book writing companies to say certain things. Who knows?
Do you know anything about the stone circles in Southern Africa? I know we touched on a little bit with the Anunnaki that stone circles are always sort of part of Anunnaki lore, which is like another thing I can't tie together because there's stone circles everywhere. I mean, Stonehenge probably being the most famous, but Göbekli Tepe, which is being excavated, there's giant stone circles under there, and they found a stone circle in Lake Michigan. Everywhere. But I think it was also Tellinger. I think it was Michael Tellinger who was talking about stone circles. So did you have any exposure to those in your youth or in your studies?
I did not, but I visited a lot of these sites, and I can tell you something that you feel. I don't know. You can see me. Look at the goosebumps. You feel an energy there. It's something crazy. Like I cannot explain it. So it's definitely on. Do you know what the ley lines are?
Sure.
On the planet, right? So a lot of these things are perfectly positioned on the ley lines or the chakras of the planet, and they all somehow line up to the equinoxes. All of them. So there's definitely something that they use, they built as I think it was just like it could be like a portal of some sort, which they use the energy, they harness the energy of the sun to activate these things. Again, coming back to frequency vibration, it all works on that. And I don't exactly know how all that stuff works. And I don't think human race will ever learn how those things work, but there has to be a reason why all these ancient sites were connected to the equinoxes. The sun is way more powerful than we even realize, I think.
There's a lot of things that we don't know about, but actually, Cliff Dunning, who was on a couple weeks ago, he gave a really good definition of the ley lines and telluric energies and the portals, and how there's certain places where the ley lines intersect. And there's, stronger energy gatherings or bubblings there. And a lot of times these sites were built right over that. And that there are people who believe that they're portals, not just you. So, that's...
Oh, yeah. And if you look into that too, like a lot of military bases, a lot of like churches are built on those lines. A lot of these ancient temples are built on those lines. I feel like maybe the government know about this and, they just don't want to disclose a lot of these things.
It's entirely possible. I know for sure that a lot of churches, and not just churches, Wes. When I say churches, I mean denomination neutral. I mean that could be synagogues, it could be mosques, it could be I don't know what Hindu holy buildings are called. I'll just say temples. But a lot of religious structures, in all cultures, dating back. Machu Picchu, a lot of the pyramids built over these ley lines, and a lot of them were built over previous churches and temples. The Romans sort of made that famous, but they certainly didn't originate it. It's just that I think, in the 20th and now 21st century, that an education in North America is very Eurocentric.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure it goes much deeper than that. Like you said, like they built these temples over the other temples. Who knows how far back that goes? It probably goes back thousands and thousands of years.
Instead of going over the list of the other monsters now, I think I'll save that for other shows. Maybe we'll do like, one or two monsters each show is at the end, assuming this happens again. But we're best friends now, so it's definitely going to happen again. No, I'm kidding. We're not best friends. So I'm not going to go single white female on you.
Over Skype.
Yeah, over Skype. Yeah. Yes. I may have other Skype best friends also. I also, you should be. I also have Zoom best friends. But I need to ask you, I mean, I didn't want to get too much into the wrestling thing because I didn't even know if you were going to disclose that because I wanted to preserve your privacy, though it's great for me because, I mean, now I have a famous guy on here and, it's easier to promote, even though I don't know how to use Twitter properly and do hashtags and stuff like that, but it'll get out. And yeah, you know how to do that. Who in God's green earth in the locker rooms do you talk to about this stuff? Is there like, I know that wrestlers like everyone else are as diverse as everyone else. And I've spoken to a few wrestlers and they're as different as everyone else is. So who in your 24 years, though I understand these are sort of news studies too, but who in your, whatever, however long you want to say, like, who did you have conversations? You're like, yeah, you're into this stuff too? Cool. Like did you went into the court and they're like, oh, great, the nerds are talking again.
So there's actually quite a few guys, I've only been into this maybe in the last 6 or 7 years. I remember 10 years ago when I moved to United States. I don't know if you watch wrestling and I don't know if he's going to be happy me disclosing his name, but it kind of fits his character, Bray Wyatt.
Sure.
He told me about Soraya Sitchin and David Icke and the Reptiles and Anunnaki about 10, 11 years ago. And he goes, he gave me a podcast to listen to, and he goes, just listen to this with an open mind. Back then, I was not open-minded at all. Like my journey started when I broke both my legs and had the near-death experience. That's when I started this journey. But I remember sitting next to him on the plane, and he gave me this podcast and listening to David Icke talk about the Reptiles and the Anunnaki, and I was like, dude, if you believe any of this stuff, you're probably crazy. And now I fully believe all that stuff. And I tried to connect with him the other day and I was like, dude, let's chat about all this stuff. And he's like, no, you can't talk about this stuff anymore. Like, I'm like, why not? Like you put me on this stuff years ago and now I did the research and I know a lot about it. So, he's a family man. So he just kind of wants to get on with his life and not think about it and not talk about it anymore. But, he's definitely one of the guys that opened my eyes to that. But there are a few other guys too. And I feel like the more time goes on, the more and more guys get exposed to stuff like this, like whether it's the Ayahuasca downloads they get or people do the Ayahuasca or DMT or they have friends or they see movies and they start looking into this stuff. But, all these things are written in our DNA, if you think about it. I'll give you a little example. There was a scientist that took a piece of a nail, right? And his ebook onto this piece of, because all DNA is like a USB drive. It's like a chip, right? He downloaded this book onto this piece of DNA, and then he could download it into any other system, any other computer. And that was just a little piece. Then he worked out if the whole body was like a USB drive, how much could it store? How much data could it store? And he came up with a number of 4.5 billion years worth of data,
wow.
Which coincidentally is the age of planet Earth, right?
Yeah.
Which is actually hilarious. I don't know how that ties into that, but I believe that all these things are written on our DNA. And, sometimes when people take psychedelic drugs or have a near-death experience, they somehow tap into that, and maybe the Akashic records. A lot of mystics, they say, once you go inside, you will have all the knowledge, and maybe that's what they meant. Like somehow there's a way you can go into your DNA and figure out all these things and read it. And, you hear a lot about people that have near-death experiences, and when they wake up, they just know a lot of things, and modern day science will say, no, these guys are crazy and stuff like that. But if you actually look at these guys with the information that they come back with, it's fascinating. Like that's a whole different topic. I've read about 20 or 30 books on people that had near-death experiences, because when I know what I experienced, and I know I'm not crazy. So I wanted to know if anyone else experienced that. And then they talk about these things in depth, and I'm like, now I know I'm not crazy. There's definitely something much, much bigger happening here that we even know.
Truly crazy people don't know they're crazy. I don't even think they mull it over and struggle with it. So if you know you're crazy, it just means you're not crazy. It just means that you maybe have, odd interests or things that don't fit exactly into the norm. But what I found is the more you get to know people and the more you get past their layers, we're all a little bit nuts. We all have something. And there's a lot of people with these kinds of similar interests. It's just how deep they go into that versus music versus, The Walking Dead or, whatever it is. But, we can find stuff anywhere. So actually, Bray Wyatt doesn't surprise me at all. If you told me Aleister Black, Tommy End, that wouldn't surprise me. Matt Sydal, I would be surprised if he wasn't at least aware of these things. I'm not going to go through a name of, 100 different.
Yeah, I can give you a whole list, but we'll do that on another show, and maybe we'll get one or two of them in to throw in or something.
The more the merrier. That'll be fun. And by then I will hopefully talk. Well, you met my tech support, La Sicaria. I would like to get rid of the other program and get the regular Zoom, but I don't want to pay for both. I mean, it's redundant. And with that, you can have, like up to 8 people or whatever for an unlimited amount of time. And I don't know. I'll work it out with her. But, in the end, she wins the argument. So,
right. And we'll figure it out. I mean, I feel like technology is moving ahead rapidly right now. I don't know if you're a big technology fan, but I feel like technology is going to jump 100 years forward in the next 5 years.
I'm a fan of technology. I'm just bad at it and afraid of it. Now, I also had a guy named Leo Zagami on this show. It was probably 6 or 7 episodes ago, maybe less than that. But, his thing was on Cyber Satan and the New World Order, and that basically the Antichrist is in the internet. So, so now I sort of can get that out of my head a little bit that's part of it. But I figured that the die is cast already. I mean, so if I'm doomed, I'm doomed. I may as well have fun along the way, right?
Exactly. Just live your life. Like, my girlfriend is the same. My girlfriend is from the Amazon, actually. She's from the Shipopo tribe. And she's the same thing. She doesn't want to do any of the medicine or the ayahuasca. She doesn't want to meditate. She doesn't want to know anything. Basically, if this was the Matrix, she chooses to take the blue pill. She's like, I just want to live my last days out. I don't want to know any of these things. Please don't talk to me about any of these things. Please don't bring any of it up. Please don't talk to my grandparents about this stuff, because her grandparents still live there in Bolivia. So she's like, I don't want to know any of this stuff. Please, I just want to live normal life.
Well, La Sicaria is from Ecuador, the neighbor.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so they could be best friends too. Look at that. Actually, they probably have a better chance of it. So ask her this: if she loves the Matrix. I have this kooky theory, and I think I've heard one other person say it, but I don't know if they heard it from me or not. Okay, so my theory is that the John Wick movies are sequels to the Matrix. They are the only sequels to the Matrix. And it's just Neo took the blue pill. He's sitting there dreaming. And that explains why he's basically a super fighter, rarely gets hurt, recovers. And there's this whole world of strange, rules and weapons. And everyone's an assassin, but nobody uses a gun from far away. It's only when they're close up. It's always raining. It's always dark. They all use swords and knives. Nobody's a sniper. It's like a constant video game, and that's his fantasy. His fantasy was to be like a high-end assassin in this like video game world, and the John Wick movies are simply just him dreaming in the Matrix.
That's very fascinating you say that, because I had a similar theory, because John Wick 4 and Matrix 4 is coming out on the same day.
Yes, and I don't think that was a joke. I think that was a joke to us.
Right. I mean, they're calling it Keanu Day, and it's going to take quite a while for this to happen. But who knows? I mean, it's the same actors that plays in both. It was the same director, the same stunt. The director of John Wick was actually the main stunt guy in the Matrix, but he got hurt. He broke his back, and for years and years and years, he couldn't do anything. So he couldn't be a stunt guy anymore. So he became a director. So him and Keanu are actually really good friends. So that is very plausible. That theory could definitely become true. I just think it might be something where, when he beats the Matrix, yeah, you're right. When he beats the Matrix, and John Wick is just one of the programs that he runs.
Yeah, there's another final boss. It's whatever he wins, there's always a new adventure caused by something frivolous. But yeah, and I totally think that those movies dropping on the same day was their way of saying, yeah, fuck you guys, it's
right.
A little ironic joke, it's the same thing. But all right, well, I'm glad. See,
interesting thing too. Like, do you know? Have you ever listened to Keanu interviews?
Yeah.
He says that the Matrix was a documentary.
Yeah.
He says that. That's out of his own words. Whether he's messing with people or he knows something that we don't, who knows?
Well, there's been a lot of articles on that and scholarly articles on that also. And listen, I don't know that anybody wants to believe it. I think in some way, maybe it's comforting that we are sort of an experiment and that, that it's all going to be okay in the end. I suppose it's all preordained, but I don't know. There are certain concepts that are too big for my head to be concerned about, because if we are in a matrix, there's no control. I mean, there's nothing that can be done about it. I mean, I think that's the difference between, like a regular conspiracy theory posits that we have some element of control, and the we might be that there's 10 families that have controls, or the defense industrial industry has control, or the media, industry, or they're all the same. The heads of those are part of that 10, or the Illuminati. They have control, but somebody has control. And then the alternate is that, well, listen, you don't have control. Government's never just doing the best they can to maintain some control. And yes, some people want and have more power than others. Then you got the Matrix. Which is now it's just a game. We're just a game for somebody else's amusement. That one is, I can do either one of the other two or things in the middle. But that one, that's just like, okay, if it is, it is. What do you do?
Right, exactly. And I mean, both those could possibly be true. And just like John Wick and the Matrix are kind of intertwined, I feel like both those theories could be intertwined. I feel like you say, like, yeah, there's nothing we can do. We're just an experiment. Unless you become Neo, unless you break out of the system, you understand how this works, and you fight for your belief system, because I honestly don't believe there's anything like good and evil, good or bad. Obviously, there's morals. You're not going to go kill someone and think that that's correct. Obviously not. But I mean, both of those are very plausible, and maybe that's what Jesus and Buddha and Shiva and all these spiritual leaders, they were the Neos trying to break out and trying to explain to people how to break out of the Matrix. Maybe, who knows?
It's entirely possible, or they could be the ones who had stronger angel blood in them, and they were the most aware of the Nephilim, who had that, had access to the Merkaba or the cloud more easily, or both, or maybe they're one and the same. So yeah, all sorts of fun stuff out there that we can talk about. So yeah. I think this is like a natural stopping point. I'm looking, and we're at 90 minutes, which is probably not an actual 90 minutes, but it'll be between the intro and the outro. I hope that you will do this again, and we can make this to be continued, and maybe have further series. If those Masons are interested, that would be excellent. Cool. If you can get any people from the wrestling community or any community, really, that's awesome. I would love to talk to shamans. Really anything that's interesting is welcome in the Garden of Doom, and pretty much everyone's interesting. And if you were just saying that, well, I'll edit that out.
I definitely want to do this again. I definitely want to do some research and brush up on some of the stuff that I do know, because I can about the stuff I can talk for hours. A lot of my friends hate me for that, because once I go into down this rabbit hole, there's no stopping me.
Here I am.
Yeah, so we'll definitely do this again, and we'll have some topics, and maybe I can get one of the other guys to come in on as well.
I'll be your huckleberry. So yeah, all right, very good. And I've got my little source of guests and amateurs and researchers and philosophers, dinosaur philosophers as well. So yeah, all right, cool. To be continued. Everyone out there, we want to thank PJ Black, Dr. Black, soon to be actual Dr. Black, the doctor of darewolfness, the doctor of many things, a man that defies definition. And actually, this is a total coincidence, but I'm going to be seeing him live in a couple of weeks, from the audience. He's going to be wrestling Ring of Honor, July 11th. For those of you who are in the Baltimore area who would like to travel for wrestling, it's the best in the world pay-per-view. So you can check that out and see him in action. But if you can't come live, you can get it on pay-per-view. I just said that. Anything else that you want to push, plug, promote within wrestling, outside of wrestling?
No, just you hit it on the head. I mean, July 11th is the pay-per-view, and this will be the first time in over a year that fans get to attend live. So we are really excited about this. It's very different wrestling in front of a live audience than it is in an empty arena. it comes back to that energy, frequency, vibration, right? We feed off that energy of the crowd, and the performance is completely different. So I'm really just looking forward to kind of going back to normal and feeling that energy. So I almost feel like that's my, people call me an adrenaline junkie all the time because I fly wingsuits, I fly paragliders, I skydive, I base jump. That's how I got injured.
The Darewolf.
Yep. But I feel like wrestling in front of a live audience spikes my adrenaline much higher than all of those things together. So I'm just looking forward to getting back to that, because once my adrenaline is spiked, that activates my DNA and my thought process and everything else. So I'm just looking forward to that.
And you're facing them boys, the Briscoe brothers. So that's got to be, terrifying.
Yeah. And then, they are some of my favorite wrestlers. They're my favorite tag team of all time, in the modern day. So I'm super excited about this.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Glad you're getting back to the thing that you love, and we'll welcome you back into the Garden of Doom anytime. And, but we'll coordinate. At this point, at this point, I just don't do things willy-nilly. We coordinate, I confirm and all that stuff. But now that we have some track record, I'll get a little less crazy. All right. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day. Good luck in the match, and I wish you extreme success in your PhD and in your research, because that only is going to make things better for our show. And I certainly hope the Masons and the others that we alluded to will say yes, or at least some will say yes, because I think that would be really interesting. Who gets to have a conversation with a 33-degree Mason? Not me. Or not to my knowledge anyway. And I know lots of people, on the internet claim to be Masons and whatever, but who knows? Anyone can claim to be anything on the internet. I claim to be handsome. So, All right, Dr. Black, thank you very much. Attend to your patients, and thank you for accommodating me. He's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, so it's much earlier there when we're recording. So all is well, all is cool. Again, your passport to the Garden is perpetual.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to some of our future chats.
All right, cool. Very good.
Let's take a journey to Africa, concerning the mystic word and you learning the massacre. It's from the witch doctor, spit rock, if this opera will stop, get the shock, or it's not gonna be stopped in this proper. I've been elevated, I'm an herbalist and a verbalist, an eternal concern of a murky serpent, the purposes. I'll be a healer for you, my force is silent. I don't really like to, but I will resort to violence. My power source of private, you made a choice to fight it. Ignore the signs of a morbid kind of sorcery, know the climate. Bring your body back for copycat, you come to my ring of honor, you'll be in a ring of fire like Johnny Cash. Crisis, they're giving you mind tricks, but really I'm here to be given enlightenment in the form of excitement. I'm lacing them up and ready to fight. Then when I'm giving you lightning, when I shine like a diamond. Darkest night, deepest sea, brightest day, deepest dream. You will be leaving me. You will be leaving me. Darkest night, deepest sea, brightest day, deepest dream. You will be leaving me. You will be leaving me. World traveler, they call me Dr. Black, and all you copycats will get rocked and not get your chakras back. I'm about to snap, you get washed like a laundromat, and beyond the fact that I'm on in the doctor's back. Let's go. I walked in with the Nexus and I got more with me. How many ways can I beat you? Well, I got 450. The Superman from the Cape Down. I won't put my cape down till you bow with your face down. Let's go. I'm a werewolf from the realms of the universe. On the way to South Africa, I was held up on Jupiter. Learned to converse with the universe, from the tribes and the Zulu verse. On my journey, you're moving back from the moon to earth. Yeah. Darkest night, deepest sea, brightest day, deepest dream. You will be leaving me. You will be leaving me. Darkest night, deepest sea, brightest day, deepest dream. You will be leaving me. You will be leaving me. On a mission, the vision is all the wisdom I listen. My intuition is get what they call magicians. Blessed be when the stars align, but it's hard to find anyone who can all define. I'm in all the tribes. My ominous consciousness is synonymous to a tsunami in my subconsciousness. I'm consciously conjuring Romulus, gotta be proud of predominance. I've been crossing the continents, I'm autonomous. I enter the spiritual realm, I am no longer possible. able to be quantified. I'm a private, intelligent design, enlightened